Namaste. Dhanavad Pranam. By the grace and guidance of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad, Shripad Bhakti Madhav of Puri Maharaj, we are reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, Creation, Chapter 13, Text 43. Yatha krido pashkaranam, Yatha krido pashkaranam, Samyoga Vigamaviha, Ichaya kriditosyatam, Tathaiveshachayanurnam. As a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. Purport. We must know for certain that the particular position in which we are now set up, is an arrangement of the Supreme Will in terms of our own acts in the past. The Supreme Lord is present as the localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being, as it is said in Bhagavad Gita 13.23. And therefore, he knows everything of our activities in every age and every stage of our lives. He rewards the reactions of our actions by placing us in some particular place. A rich man gets his son born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but the child who comes as the rich man's son deserves such a place, and therefore he is placed there by the will of the Lord. And at a particular moment, when the child has to be removed from that place, he is also carried by the will of the Supreme, even if the child or father does not wish to be separated from the happy relation. The same thing happens in the case of a poor man also. Neither rich man nor poor man has any control over such meetings or separations of living beings. The example of a player has his playthings should not be misunderstood. One may argue that since the Lord is bound to award reactionary results of our own actions, the example of a player cannot be applied. But it is not so. We must always remember that the Lord is the supreme will, and he is not bound by any law. Generally, the law of karma is that one is awarded the result of one's own actions, but in special cases, by the will of the Lord, such resultant actions are changed also. But this change can be effected by the will of the Lord only, and no other. Therefore, the example of the players cited in this verse is quite appropriate. For the supreme will is absolutely free to do whatever he likes, and because he is all perfect, there is no mistake in any of his actions or reactions. These changes of resultant actions are especially rendered by the Lord when a pure devotee is involved. It is assured in the Bhagavad Gita 9.30-31 that the Lord saves a pure devotee who has surrendered unto him without reservation from all sorts of reactions of sins, and there is no doubt about this. There are hundreds of examples of reactions changed by the Lord in history of the world. If the Lord is able to change the reactions of one's past deeds, then certainly he is not himself bound by any action or reaction of his own deeds. He is perfect and transcendental to all laws. Text 44. Yanmanyase drubham lokam adruvam vanachobhayam sarvata nahi sochaste snehad anyatra mohajat. O king, in all circumstances, whether you consider the soul to be an eternal principle or the material body to be perishable, or everything to exist in impersonal absolute truth, or everything to be an inexplicable combination of matter and spirit, feelings of separation are due only to illusory affection and nothing more. Purport. The actual fact is that every living being is an individual part and parcel of the Supreme Being, and his constitutional position is subordinate cooperative service. Either in his conditional material existence or in his liberated position of full knowledge and eternity, the living entity is eternally under the control of the Supreme Lord. But those who are not conversant with factual knowledge put forward many speculative propositions about the real position of the living entity. It is admitted, however, by all schools of philosophy that the living being is eternal and that the covering body of the five material elements is perishable and temporary. The eternal living entity transmigrates from one material body to another by the law of karma, and the material bodies are perishable by their fundamental structures. Therefore, there is nothing to be lamented in the case of the souls being transferred into another body, or the material bodies perishing to a certain degree, uh, or the material bodies perishing at a certain stage. There are others also who believe in the merging of the spirit soul and the Supreme Spirit when it is uncovered by the material engagement. And there are others also who do not believe in the existence of spirit or soul, but believe in tangible matter. In our daily experience, we find so many transformations of matter from one form to another, but we do not lament such changes, since such changing features. In either of the above cases, the force of divine energy is uncheckable. No one has any hand in it, and thus there is no cause of grief. Text 45. Tasmajja hyanga vaiklavyam agyakritam atmanaha katam tvantata kripana vartaram stecha mamvina. Therefore give up your anxiety due to the ignorance of the self. You are now thinking of how they, who are helpless poor creatures, will exist without you. Purport. When we think of our kith and kin as being helpless and dependent on us, it is all due to ignorance. Every living creature is allowed all protection by the order of the Supreme Lord in terms of each one's acquired position in the world. The Lord is known as Bhuta Brit, one who gives protection to all living beings. One should discharge his duties only, for no one but the Supreme Lord can give protection to anyone else. This is explained more clearly in the following verse. Text 46. Kala karma gunhadino dehoyam pancha bhautika katam anyam stu gopayet sarpagrasto yataparam. This gross material body, made of 5 elements, is already under the control of eternal time, kala, action, karma, and the modes of material nature, guna. How then can it, being already in the jaws of the serpent, protect others? Purport. The world's movements for freedom through political, economic, social, and cultural propaganda can do no benefit to anyone, for they are controlled by superior power. A conditioned living being is under the full control of the material nature, represented by eternal time, and activities under the dictation of different modes of nature. There are 3 material modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. Unless one is situated in the mode of goodness, one cannot see things as they are. The passionate and the ignorant cannot even see things as they are. Therefore, a person who is passionate and ignorant cannot direct his activities on the right path. Only the man in the quality of goodness can help to a certain extent. Most persons are passionate and ignorant, and therefore their plans and projects can hardly do any good to others. Above the modes of nature is eternal time, which is called kala, because it changes the shape of everything in the material world. Even if we are able to do something temporarily beneficial, time will see that the good project is frustrated in course of time. The only thing possible to be done is to get rid of eternal time, kala, which is compared to kala sharpa, or the cobra snake, whose bite is always lethal. No one can be saved from the bite of a cobra. The best remedy for getting out of the clutches of the cobra-like kala, or its integrity, the modes of nature, is bhakti yoga. It is recommended in Bhagavad Gita 14.26. The highest perfectional project of philanthropic activities is to engage everyone in the act of preaching bhakti yoga all over the world, because that alone can save the people from the control of maya, or the material nature represented by kala, karma, and guna, as described above. The Bhagavad Gita 14.26 confirms this definitely. Text 47. Hastani sahasthanam apadhani chatuspadam falguni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. Those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the four-legged. The weak are the subsistence of the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. The systematic law of subsistence in the struggle for existence is there by the supreme will, and there is no escape for anyone by any amount of planning. The living beings who have come to the material world against the will of the Supreme Being are under the control of a supreme power called Maya Shakti, the deputed agent of the Lord, and this Daivi Maya is meant to pinch the conditioned souls by threefold miseries, one of which is explained here in this verse. The weak are the subsistence of the strong. No one is strong enough to protect himself from the onslaught of a stronger, and by the will of the Lord there are systematic categories of the weak, the stronger and the strongest. There is nothing to be lamented if a tiger eats a weaker animal, including a man, because that is the law of the Supreme Lord. But although the law states that a human being must subsist on another living being, there is the law of good sense also, for the human being is meant to obey the laws of the Scriptures. This is impossible for other animals. The human being is meant for self-realization, and for that purpose he is not to eat anything which is not first offered to the Lord. The Lord accepts from his devotees all kinds of food preparations made of vegetables, fruits, leaves, and grains. Fruits, leaves, and milk in different varieties can be offered to the Lord, and after the Lord accepts the foodstuff, the devotee can partake of the prasad, by which all suffering in the struggle for existence will be gradually mitigated. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.26. Even those who are accustomed to eating animals can offer foodstuff, not to the Lord directly, but to an agent of the Lord, under certain conditions of religious rites. Injunctions of the Scriptures are meant not to encourage the eaters of animals, but to restrict them by regulative principles. The living being is the source of subsistence for others, stronger living beings. No one should be very anxious for his subsistence in any circumstance, because there are living beings everywhere, and no living being starves for want of food at any place. Maharaj Yudhisthira is advised by Narada not to worry about his uncle's suffering for want of food, for they could live on vegetables available in the jungles as prasad of the Supreme Lord, and thus realize the path of salvation. Exploitation of the weaker living being by the stronger is the natural law of existence. There is always an attempt to devour the weak in different kingdoms of living beings. There is no possibility of checking this tendency by any artificial means under material conditions. It can be checked only by awakening the spiritual sense of the human being by practice of spiritual regulations. The spiritual regulative principles, however, do not allow a man to slaughter weaker animals on one side and teach others peaceful coexistence. If man does not allow the animals peaceful coexistence, how can he expect peaceful coexistence in human society? The blind leaders must therefore understand that the Supreme Being and the blind leaders must therefore understand the Supreme Being and then try to implement the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God, or Rama Rajya, is impossible without the awakening of God consciousness in the mass mind of the people of the world. Thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 48 on Wednesday, hopefully. All glories to Srila Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charya Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to our Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the worldwide devotees. Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Nrshingapali Dham Ki Jai. Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Pramanandi, Hari 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 Bol. Dandavat Pranam.